Every time we open our phones, we see 100 different lives we could be living. A digital nomad waking up in a camper van, a junior partner staring out a high-rise at Goldman Sachs, a quiet life on a Spanish farm. We are exposed to thousands of valid life paths daily, and it leaves us paralyzed by the volume of options. The poet Sylvia Plath captured this exact dread with her famous fig tree analogy. She imagined her life branching out, with every possible future hanging like a ripe fig. She wanted them all, the family, the career, the travel, but choosing one meant losing the rest. So she sat at the trunk, unable to decide, starving as the figs blackened and dropped to the ground. This chart shows the paradox of choice. When shoppers were given 24 different jams to taste, their purchase rate was a mere 3%. But when given only 6 jams, sales jumped to 30%. Having too many options shuts down our ability to decide. Those findings come from a landmark behavioral study out of Stanford and Columbia universities, proving that human brains simply aren't wired to process limitless abundance. We trap ourselves trying to calculate the absolute optimal choice before we move. But waiting for perfect data on infinite variables is a computational impossibility. The math guarantees inaction. Research into complex decision-making increasingly points back to a concept called satisficing, or good enough decision-making. Satisficing allocates your cognitive effort to the specific parameters of the choice. It prevents the mental exhaustion that comes from chasing an impossible ideal. Researchers at the Max Planck Institute categorize high-stakes life choices across 5 specific dimensions: conflicting cues, identity shifts, complete uncertainty, irreversibility, and high risk. By auditing which dimension your dilemma belongs to, you can deploy a targeted psychological tool to force an actionable outcome. This matrix maps 5 dimensions against their cognitive tools. First, conflicting cues, weighing options on unshared scales, like salary versus family. The tool is elimination by aspects. List deal breakers and throw out options failing to meet them, cutting the list down to a final few. This requires sacrifice. You must be willing to kill objectively good options early and detach yourself from the fear of missing out. If a decision feels too heavy, use the thirst for confirmation. Wait until you find at least 2 consistent pieces of evidence favoring the choice before moving forward. Next is the identity shift. These choices alter your beliefs, values, and who you aspire to be. Here you apply the Minimax Inaction Regret Framework. You mentally project yourself to age 80 and ask one question: which path minimizes the regret I would feel for not taking action? When deciding whether to quit a secure, high-paying vice presidency at a Wall Street hedge fund, a young executive used this exact framework. Jeff Bezos knew at 80 years old he wouldn't regret failing at a new internet bookstore as much as he would regret never having tried. The Minimax framework often forces you toward the higher friction path. Long-term human regret rarely comes from bad attempts. It almost entirely stems from missed opportunities. The third dimension is complete uncertainty, where you cannot predict a choice's value until you live it. To bypass this, deploy the select crowd and trust the expert frameworks. Look at opinions of a small group, or hand the decision to a verified professional. You must set aside your ego here. You have to accept that you lack the data to optimize the choice yourself, and rely on historical precedent from those who have crossed the bridge. The final 2 dimensions are irreversibility and high risk. These govern decisions with permanent or harmful physical, social, or financial consequences. We mitigate these with testing the waters and hedge clipping. Testing the waters requires running parallel identities. If you want to change careers, you experiment with the new path on the weekends while still working your current job. You sample the life before you commit. Hedge clipping is an action-first strategy. You figure out one single, acceptable step towards safety, take it, pause to assess the new environment, and adjust. These risk mitigation methods are slow, but when you are facing irreversible stakes, trading speed for meticulously calibrated steps is the only way to prevent failure. The purpose of these tools is to achieve computational plausibility. They shrink the variables of your life down to a scale your brain can actually process. If you're a maximizer paralyzed by overanalysis, use elimination by aspects. High-stakes navigators facing permanent risk trade speed for safety using hedge clipping. And if you're a paralyzed dreamer stuck under the fig tree, choosing one path inherently requires mourning the loss of the others. Frameworks can only help you navigate the branches. No tool will ever eliminate the requirement of self-trust. Make a choice that is good enough, and back your own ability to thrive in the reality that follows.